Diversification isn't just about the number of ETFs you hold. Today, we're unpacking the perils of ETF overlap. Now, this segment was inspired by a question from Isabella.
Hi guys, I hope you're having a great start to your week so far. Thank you so much for putting out the content that you guys do. I really love it. Look straight to the question. So I've got ETFs in IVV and VGS. And my question is, am I doubling up on those? Should I just keep the one? Any feedback on that would be great. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks Isabella. Love the question. So probably just to start with, what is ETF overlap?
So ETF overlap is when you own a number of ETFs, but the underlying holdings are the same in each. So the classic example would be if you own an ASX 200 ETF and then an Australian banks ETF, the major holdings in each of those are Australia's big four banks.
Yes, I think it's something most or nearly all investors will experience at some point on their journey. I know I'm still experiencing it today with the amount of choice there is out there and how generally portfolios develop over time. It's very common. So I think that's the first thing is don't think you're doing anything wrong. This is super common.
Yeah. Now, it's not necessarily always a problem, and we'll get to that, but why is it a problem?
So many think it's fees, but I think firstly, just to dispel that, because generally you only pay a fee on the funds you have under management. So if you have 5K in one ETF and 5K in the other ETF, you're not paying a double account administration fee for each ETF. You're just going to be paying the fee on that ETF.
Yeah, so to explain that, in my example before, we had the ASX 200 ETF and the bank ETF. Let's say they had the same management fee of 1%. If you put all $10,000 you're going to invest in one, then you're paying 1% on $10,000. Or if you split it $5,000 in each, then you're paying 1% on each of those $5,000. So the actual fee load isn't different. The problem comes from the illusion of diversification.
Yes, the risk here is that you're not actually diversified if you have ETF overlap, because the ETFs may have underlying holdings which are the same, so they're highly correlated. Yeah. If one moves one way, the other will move the same. So in the example here, IVV and VGS, they have a historical correlation of around 0.9 to 0.95, which basically means 90 to 95% of the time they will move in the same direction on any given day.
And just for people who are unfamiliar, IVV is the S&P 500 ETF, which tracks the 500 biggest US stocks, and VGS is the Vanguard MSCI International Shares ETF, which is a global index, but these days it's close to 80% US stocks.
Yeah, so you think you're getting diversification, but if you own both of them, you've still got 80% minimum in the US.
Yeah. So, we actually did have a look at these two ETFs in particular. The top holdings on each, just to give you the top three, NVIDIA is the top holding in each. In VGS, it's about 6% of the ETF. In IVV, it's 8% of the ETF. Apple was the next highest, 5% versus 7%. Microsoft was third, 5% versus 6.5%. So really, it's those big tech names that dominate both of the ETFs. And so the overlap is really high. And so to your point around correlation, when tech is going well, as it is right now, both ETFs do really well. But the risk is when tech falls off and something else is doing well, then both of your ETFs fall off and you don't benefit from whatever else is doing well.
Yes.
And that is really the fundamental point around diversification. Diversification isn't measured by the number of things you own. It's measured by your exposure to any one source of risk. If one thing goes wrong, it shouldn't blow up your whole portfolio. Global diversification, getting outside of Australia, is a great example where if one thing goes wrong in Australia, it doesn't blow up your whole portfolio. It doesn't matter if you own 5 Aussie stocks or 500 Aussie stocks. You're not diversified because that one source of risk, something going wrong in Australia, blows up your whole portfolio.
Yes, and there's a famous saying in investing that diversification is the only free lunch in investing. Ren, you probably know who said that.
Harry Markowitz.
Yeah.
The father of modern portfolio theory.
Yeah. So it's just an important way to actually lower the risk you have for the same or better returns, diversification. And you guys have done, And we've done plenty of other content on diversification. We can link into some other episodes in the show notes if you want to find out more.
So I said earlier that ETF overlap isn't necessarily a problem. I think the key thing is being aware of it and being aware of how much you overlap. If you want to enhance your returns with exposure to like a particular country or a particular sector, that's absolutely fine. You know, we see a lot of people with like a global set and forget index fund and then maybe like a FANG Plus or a semiconductor or something. And that's fine. If you have a thesis around tech and you want that thematic ETF, and then you also just want like a global ETF, which right now is heavily exposed to tech, that's fine. You just have to be aware of the benefits and risks of being more exposed to tech. So I think to answer Isabella's question, like right now, yes, you are doubling up. You don't need both. That doesn't mean you need to sell one. You know, if you've got capital gains on both, you might just want to hold them. But you should just be aware that you're less diversified than you might think. And for me, it would be as you're dollar cost averaging, as you're building your portfolio over time, maybe you start thinking about how do I diversify this portfolio with new contributions? So maybe it's an Europe ETF or an Asia ETF or an Australian ETF, whatever it is. Or if you don't have a lot of capital gains or you're not too worried about the tax consequences, you could, you know, sell one and use that money to diversify your portfolio.
So the other argument here as well is the simplicity.
Yeah.
And I know, Alec, I believe that's what you ended up doing. You took a slight hit on capital gains, but now your portfolio is 4 ETFs, very simple. You've got the diversification you need. It's automated.
Yep.
And now the admin headache of knowing all these different things you own is gone.
Yeah, it's horses for courses. It depends on what you want, how you want to manage your portfolio. But I think the two ETFs do overlap quite a lot. I think another one that you could think about, Isabella, if you just want to complement your US exposure with one simple ETF, there are a number of ex-US ETFs that are on the market at the moment. So Vanguard have one, VEU, and then BetaShares have one, EXUS, ex-US. So those two, if you feel like you're massively overly exposed to the US, one of those ex-US ETFs can be a nice complement there.
Yeah. And I think just to close this out, probably if you're listening, take a few minutes after the episode, look at ETFs, understand how many of your top 10 holdings actually repeat in your different ETFs. Are you getting the diversification you think you are? And that will probably put you in a good place.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.